Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Pollyanna. Chapter 16, An Accident. One day after school, Pollyanna stopped at Dr. Chilton's office to pick some medicine for Mrs. Snow. Even though she was very busy with schoolwork and her other activities, she always made time to visit the sick woman. They became fast friends. Pollyanna's visits were the happiest times of Mrs. Snow's life. Perhaps the only happy times. During her latest visit, the child had offered to go get the medicine from Dr. Chilton's office. "What a nice place," said Pollyanna when she arrived at the doctor's. "Oh, well, it's just some rooms, not really a home," he replied. "I know. Mr. Pendleton said it takes a woman's hand and heart or a child's presence to make it a real home." Dr. Chilton laughed strangely. "Oh, and I forgot to tell you, it wasn't Aunt Polly that Mr. Pendleton used to love, so we're not going to live in this house." "But why don't you find a woman's hand and heart, Dr. Chilton?" The doctor's face had a painful expression. "My dear Pollyanna, such things are not always there for the asking," he said quietly. Pollyanna's eyes grew wide. "You mean you tried to get somebody's hand and heart once like Mr. Pendleton did, and you couldn't?" The doctor, not answering, gave her the medicine for Mrs. Snow. Pollyanna left his office, but couldn't help wondering about the secrets in the doctor's life. Dr. Chilton, Aunt Polly, and Mr. Pendleton all lived by themselves, and all of them seemed very unhappy. Pollyanna wished she could cheer them up. Pollyanna crossed the street to Mrs. Snow's house. From out of nowhere, a speeding car came and suddenly knocked her down. She lost consciousness. A stranger picked up her limp body and carried her to Mrs. Polly's house. Pollyanna did not know what happened to her until she awoke many days later. Miss Polly was at her bedside, holding her hand, trying not to cry. "What's the matter, Aunt Polly? Is it time to get up?" the child asked. Pollyanna tried to lift herself and fell back against the pillow. "I can't get up, Aunt Polly. Why can't I get up?" "Rest now, dear," her aunt replied gently. "A car hurt you. Just stay in bed for a while and you'll get better." "But Aunt Polly, my legs feel so muddy." I don't feel them at all." Miss Polly could find no words to ease her niece's fright. "I guess I'm not glad to be hurt," Pollyanna said, trying to smile. "But I'm glad it's just my legs, like Mr. Pendleton, and not everything, like Mrs. Snow." At the moment, Nancy was downstairs escorting John Pendleton on crutches into the sun parlor. "Can you believe that John Pendleton has come to this house?" Nancy ran to tell old Tom the gardener. "They've hardly talked for years," the gardener replied. After Miss Jenny went off to marry that minister chap, Miss Polly felt sorry for Mr. Pendleton and tried to be nice to him. Then folks around town began saying that she was chasing him. She got so upset that she never spoke to him again. Nancy listened with wide eyes. Then came Miss Polly's trouble with her own sweetheart, old Tom continued. After that, she didn't want to see anybody at all. She just shut herself up in this house, and her heart turned cold as ice. Mr. Pendleton greeted Miss Polly stiffly. "I just came to find out how Pollyanna is," he said. "No one knows," she replied, "not even Dr. Warren." "What kind of injuries does she have? Do you know?" "Some slight cuts and bruises, and an injury to the spine that paralyzed her from the hips down." There were tears in Miss Polly's eyes, and her voice shook. "I should tell you," said Mr. Pendleton, "that I wanted Pollyanna to live with me. I wanted to adopt her. I am very fond of that little girl, both for her own sake and for her mother's, but she wouldn't come to me. She said that you were very good to her, and she didn't want to leave you." Miss Polly listened very carefully. Suddenly she realized that she almost lost Pollyanna twice. Once to John Pendleton and once to the car that almost killed her. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. I will see you later.